Okay, welcome back. And in this video, we're going to wrap up Chapter 8 of the Rathus Introductory Psychology text by examining the second half of the text, which focuses on emotions. In the first half of Chapter 8, we looked at motivation, and now we're going to look at the other side of this coin, which is emotions. Which again, I really want to emphasize that emotions and motivation, while they are, again, they're put into the same chapter for a reason. We were looking at them separately, but they oftentimes go hand in hand. Our emotions are oftentimes, used as a judgment of motivation. When maybe we're feeling happier, when we feel happy, we tend to be maybe a little more motivated to do things like help other people out. When we're feeling sad or we're feeling angry, obviously maybe our motivations are totally different. So I don't want you to think that these things are totally separate. And we can even throw in another component. We could talk about attitudes as well. So this idea of like motivation, emotion, and attitudes. There's it's a Venn diagram. These are not separate circles. Is kind of what I'm trying to say. So anyways, let's talk about emotions. Let's talk about the feels. Because that's what emotions are. They really are these feeling states that are accompanied by several different components. It's not that we just physically feel emotions. That's part of it. When you feel happy, you can kind of feel that happiness radiating in your body. When you feel sad or when you feel anxious, especially, you can physically feel it. But there's also cognitive components. I mean, our thoughts typically change depending on our moods, our emotions, and behavioral components. Our behavior changes. Again, when we're happy, we're more likely to help other people out. There's a lot of research that backs it up. When we're in a good mood, when we feel good, we do good. But if we're upset or angry or depressed or anxious, we're probably less likely to do those things, and our behavior will reflect that. And so we've addressed emotions a little bit already in this course, or at least in the Rathus text, when we talked about the nervous system, the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. The fight or flight, and then the rest and digest responses are kind of the origins or beginning of the emotional experiences we've already talked about. We've also talked about the limbic system, which is responsible for regulating emotions as well. So that's at least physiologically looking at where emotions originate. And so here again, kind of outlining those, or showing those components at work. So emotion like fear involves sympathetic arousal. Obviously, fear might send you into fight or flight. And the cognitive aspect is, okay, I'm afraid. I might feel like I'm in danger, maybe not, maybe emotionally or physically in danger or something of the sort. And the behavior usually is avoidance tendencies. When we're afraid, we tend to avoid things. Maybe you are worried about a class that you forgot to study for the exam, and you show up to class, and you come into class, and your first thought is, oh, I'm in danger of failing this test. And your avoidance tendencies, maybe you tell the teacher, oh, I'm sick, I want to go home and I don't feel good, I don't think I can take the test, can I come back and take it tomorrow? I'm not saying anybody in this class would do that, I'm just giving you an example. But we can apply the same thing to anger and depression, and you're welcome to stop the video and look at these same examples. But it just illustrates that emotions contain more than just what we physically feel. There's stuff going on between our ears, and then also how we behave as well. Emotions, we also, not only do we feel emotions, but we express them. And there are some methods of expressing emotions that are universal, meaning they are expressed across time, culture, place, context. For example, smiling. Smiling is typically a universal symbol of friendliness. Although, if you go to China, you go to Hungary, you go to, Iowa, you go to, some place around the world, and you smile at somebody, typically that is a sign that I am friendly to you. I'm baring my teeth. I'm friendly. Now that is not always the case. If you've ever been to like busy cities like, New York City or Los Angeles, if you're walking around and just smiling at people, with a big grin, people might think you're pretty weird. But that, for the most part, smiling is considered to be, a sign of happiness or friendliness. But we also convey our emotions in other ways beyond just our facial expressions. Our voice, we can convey our attitudes and our emotions through our voice. So we can be sarcastic, we can be happy, we can be, excited about things. We can also be dull and boring, and we can convey a lot without even our face, our body language as well, our postures and our hand gestures. Maybe the more demonstrative we are, some people, the more demonstrative they are, the more they wave their hands around, the more frantic and anxious they look. Other people are kind of cool and calm and collected. You can kind of see it in their body language. And these are considered universal emotions as well. So what you should do is maybe pause the video and see if you can fill in the blanks for each of these. These are other universal emotions that people express. So pause the video, maybe see if you can fill in the blanks, and when you come back, we'll fill in the blanks together. Okay, welcome back. So this one, I feel, we'll start with this lady here on the left, the far left side. I feel, ideally, hopefully you can tell that she is smiling. Maybe it's obviously not a big teeth grin, teeth out smile, but it looks like she's smiling. So you could say she feels happy or content or something along those lines. This person here, furrowed eyebrows, teeth baring, kind of concerned look. I feel, I would say angry, or you can make the case for sad, but it looks like anger. This lady here, wide-eyed look. You would probably say mouth open, surprised, is another one. And then number 4, this lady here on the far right, would be afraid. I feel afraid. And again, these are universal emotions, meaning these are expressed. These are ways that people convey emotions across context and culture, time and place. And these are more interesting. These are emotions that people express on their faces even when they can't see. People who are born blind and don't ever see another person's facial expressions will still exhibit these facial expressions themselves. So it's really fascinating. There is a whole branch of psychology that's also dedicated towards studying emotions, especially positive emotions. And in fact, a lot of focus in psychology, or at least in the mass media and pop culture, is kind of aimed at the more negative stuff. So positive psychology is kind of a response to that. It's like, let's focus on the positive emotions, why people thrive, why people are happy, all of these things. They look at basically some of the reasons why people are happy. They look at genetics, how people handle negative and positive events, issues like money. I know we like to think that money doesn't buy happiness, but money definitely buys comfort, and comfort allows us to not deal with some of the things that make us unhappy, like worrying about money, for example. So, how relationships, religion, attitude, all those things impact, how those impact our experiences of positive emotions like happiness. So that's a whole branch of psychology, and it's sort of a newer branch, which is pretty cool. It's a developing, kind of growing branch in psychology. Okay, truth or fiction, kind of already addressed this, but money can't buy you happiness. What do you think? Truth or fiction? Pause the video. Okay, well, the video, welcome back. The textbook says fiction, and for the most part, that is true. That, people who have more money or live at least in a middle to upper class lifestyle tend to be happier, at least in how we measure happiness currently. But that's not to say that people who don't have a lot of money aren't happy, and that's not to say that I don't think money necessarily literally buys happiness. Again, I think that money just it makes some of life's difficulties easier to cope with. And especially if you have a certain degree of money, you don't have to worry about money. Because that's a big concern for a lot of people. Even people who make good money worry about money. So, again, and again, this is probably to a certain degree. I mean, if you are a multimillionaire, once you add, if you're making $50 million, if you're a professional athlete or multimillionaire and you have $50 million and you get another $1 million, it's probably not going to add a whole lot to your happiness versus somebody who has, makes $50,000 a year and gets $1 million. Oh my gosh, their life is completely changed. So it's all kind of relative. An interesting phenomenon or hypothesis that exists with our facial features is that we can our facial expressions often give feedback to our brain kind of about how we are feeling. There is this connection between the movements of our facial muscles, our facial movements, and the experience of emotions. And so this idea is, well, could we kind of trick our brain into thinking we are feeling a certain way if we make our face into certain expressions, like smiling or frowning. So on this next slide, you can see it was an experiment where participants were asked to hold a pen in their mouth, either in a way that made their mouth more open, like a smile, or B, where they had to kind of close their mouth around it, more like a frown. And both groups of participants were asked to read a comic. I think they were asked to read the comics in the newspaper and rate how funny they were. And the participants in group A who were smiling were more likely to rate them as funny. They were more likely to rate them as like entertaining and humorous, and they enjoyed their experience. It's sort of this idea of fake it till you make it. There's probably limitations to this, but you might try it yourself one day. Just hold a pen in your mouth for a while and kind of see if your mood changes a little bit. Oh, do I feel happier? I've got the smile on my face for the last 5 minutes, and just give it a test. It's again, it's a hypothesis. It's kind of an interesting idea. Give it a try yourself. Okay. We are now going to look at one of the last topics we're going to look at is different theories of emotions, and there are 3 different theories of emotions. I don't necessarily want to say they're competing theories, but they're sort of, if you look at this chart here, there's a lot of the same ideas expressed in this chart, but things are kind of moved around for all 3 theories. So all 3 theories are trying to explain the same thing, but they're kind of using they're sort of rewording some of each other's theories. So it might be a little confusing at first, but I think I'm gonna give you an example that I think will help us understand the different theories of emotions. And the first one we're going to look at is this one here on the far left, James Longa's theory. It's a combination of 2 gentlemen who came together to form this theory. And the idea is we have some sort of external stimulus. So let's say it's a large barking vicious dog. You see this dog, and seeing this dog evokes a state of arousal and action. So maybe, this sends you into fight or flight mode. Basically, this puts you into fight or flight. And because of that, you appraise that experience. Oh, I went into fight or flight, therefore I'm afraid. So the key sentence here, if we had to sum this up, would be, I feel afraid because I'm trembling, because I'm shaking, because I'm in fight or flight. So that is how the appraisal of the situation, the appraisal of this arousal first, is what leads to the experiencing of a specific emotion, such as fear. So as it says down here, events trigger specific arousal patterns and actions, which could be fight or flight. Emotions result from our appraisal of those responses. So basically, we appraise the fight or flight response. The next theory is canon-barred, which says, okay, we have this external stimulus, which again could be the dog. We process this event in our brain. So this is going through, the parasympathetic, sympathetic nervous system, the amygdala, all kinds of brain activity is going on here. A lot of brain activity, and this results in both our feeling of an emotion of fear, if it's a response to a vicious dog, and arousal, the fight or flight response. So basically, this one is saying these 2 things are happening simultaneously. These 2 things are happening simultaneously. We're taking this same theory over here and saying these 2 events happen simultaneously. Where there's this processing going on in our brain. For maybe a split second, we go, oh, that dog is not friendly. That is a dog that wants to bite me and maybe possibly, eat me if it's it's like the worst case scenario if you've ever watched any horror movies. So canon-barred events are first processed by the brain. Body patterns of arousal, action, and our emotional responses are then triggered simultaneously. So the next theory, sometimes referred to as 2-factor theory, but this one is actually called cognitive appraisal. It's Schachter and Singer's cognitive appraisal theory. And so we have the external stimulus, which is the dog. We have our arousal. According to these 2, these 2 things are happening together. We interpret that arousal. We interpret the feeling of fear. We interpret fear. And this is how we experience emotions. So events and arousal are appraised by the individual. The emotional response stems from the person's appraisal, again, kind of really tying back into the cognitive aspects oh crap, we're really thinking here. There's a vicious dog. I don't know if I can get away or not. I don't know if what its intentions are, but it looks really mean right now. So again, thinking about the dog, James Longa theory. I feel afraid because I tremble, relying heavily on this feeling of appraisal afterwards. The next one, Canon Bard. The dog makes me tremble and I feel afraid. So these two things happening together. The and is important there. And then the next one, cognitive appraisal. I label my trembling as fear because I appraise the situation as dangerous. That is the important part, is interpreting this. Oh, this is dangerous. This dog could bite me. It could give me rabies. It could really mess me up. You know, it's a big dog. It could really hurt me. So those are the three different theories of emotions. There are a few slides that follow. So, you know, the James Longa theory wasn't perfect, so that gave rise to Cannon-Bard theory, which again, not exactly perfect. There are criticisms to both theories. So, and this is kind of where we see the development of Schachter-Singer's cognitive appraisal theory, which is kind of considered, I think, the most sort of up-to-date modern understanding of emotions. So not to say that the other two theories are necessarily totally wrong. They're kind of used as building blocks to a more nuanced understanding of emotion, which places much more emphasis on cognition. Okay, so let's see. We kind of already talked about emotions and how this relates to polygraphs. Polygraphs, we've already talked about eyewitness testimony and how that is very dubious in terms of its efficacy in solving crimes. Polygraphs are another practice that have been commonly used in the criminal justice system, and oftentimes also used in corporate America, used in other environments to tell if somebody is quote unquote lying. The problem is they're not a very good way of telling if someone's lying. They can tell whether your sympathetic nervous system is kind of activated through your heart rate, blood pressure, and respiration rate, but that is not necessarily a universal indication of people lying. In fact, I think in some cases polygraphs are banned in some countries. I don't think the United States quite has gone that far yet, but you know, in some areas they're inadmissible in court. So we used to rely heavily on them. Now, not so much. Okay, accuracy of polygraph. Yeah, not so much. They claim it's 85 to 95% accuracy, but I think that's like not actually the case at all. Other things can reduce, you know, all kinds of things can throw these things off, and again, they're not really regarded as usable. Okay, let's see. Let's do a quick comprehension check question before we go, and then we'll call it a day on Chapter 8. The James Longa theory of emotion states that A, emotions happen first, followed by physiological reactions. B, physiological reactions happen first, followed by emotion. C, physiological reactions and emotions happen simultaneously. D, the body plays a minimal role in emotions. What do you think? Pause the video. What do you think? All right, welcome back. You should have put for James Longa that physiological reactions happen first, followed by the emotion. We go into fight or flight first. We feel the fear first, according to James Longa. Then we say, oh, that's fear. We appraise the situation. It's fear. So C would be more reflective of Cannon-Bard. A would be kind of more of our common sense approach to emotion, how we typically think emotions work, and then D would be just a kind of a non-answer, or not really one we talked about. So last thing, truth or fiction. You may be able to fool a lie detector by biting your tongue or wiggling your toes. What do you think? True or false? Pause the video. Welcome back. It is in fact true. Yeah, in many ways you can fool a lie detector test. So, not that we're trying to encourage you to do that, but just know that they can be fooled. Okay, that's it for Chapter 8. We will stop here, and I think we'll pick up with Chapter 9 of the Rathus text, which I think means we are getting into lifespan development, one of my favorite chapters. I love all these chapters, but lifespan is a topic that is one of my favorites to talk about. So anyways, we'll pick up there and go from there. Have a good one. Take care.